Remember yesterday we talked about why companies advertise, and the reason why companies advertise is they want to sell a product, they want their brand recognition to be known. They are doing marketing, the marketing for the product. Hi, Ralph. Glad you were able to make it today. They're trying to traffic consumers to either their store or their website. And one of my examples was, if you see a television ad or even a print ad for Macy's, it's not necessarily for a specific product. It's to traffic you to their store or to the Macy's.com website. The same for Best Buy. They might feature a couple of different products in the store or in the commercial, but really the advertisement is to traffic you, the consumer, into their store. So hopefully they can sell you even more products, not just the ones that happen to be on sale this week. Also, people advertise, to announce their new products. And during election season, or these days it seems, 24/7, there is political ads, whether or not there's an election going on or not. So, there's a multitude of reasons why a company may advertise. So where do we see advertising? And we kind of went over this yesterday. We see it everywhere, to the point where I don't even think that we are aware of how much we are being advertised to. If you're watching TV or if you are at the movies, there's commercials, there's coming attractions. If you're standing in the lobby of a movie, all of the posters that are up announcing the coming attractions, that is advertising aimed at you. If you took the subway or a cab to the movie, chances are good that you were advertised to on your ride in. If you drove in your car and you had just regular radio on, I'm not quite sure on satellite radio, but if you just had the regular radio on, chances are good that there was an advertisement on the radio that you heard. It's literally everywhere. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're playing a game on your cell phone or if you're trying to visit a website on your cell phone, there's advertising. We go out to pick up our mail from our mailboxes, and we have direct mail. We have flyers, envelopes, postcards that are mailed to either our home. Sometimes they're even mailed to our business. There's advertising in your newspapers, your magazines, bulletins. And I was showing an example yesterday of a couple of magazines, and I feel as though the content of a magazine these days is about 90% advertising. And where it's not a blatant ad, the chances are, pretty high that the magazine article that's being written about certain products, that's its own form of advertising. If you are on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, you're being advertised to. Even if it's celebrities, a lot of celebrities now are being paid to say that they are using a specific product and take a picture of themselves using that specific product and post it, on their Instagram account. If you are driving down the street or the highway, you're seeing billboards. Some of them are animated, some of them are just printed pieces, but you almost can't go anywhere without being advertised to. I think at this point, the only way you cannot be advertised to is if you turn on your TV and go directly to Netflix. They haven't infiltrated there yet, but it doesn't mean that it's not coming. It'll be a very sad day because I enjoy Netflix because, I can just watch things without commercial interruptions, and I'm pretty sure that'll end up going away too. We'll probably have to end up paying more for a Netflix subscription in 10 years that doesn't have ads. And if that happens, you can say that I told you so. So we have 5 major players in the advertising industry. We have the advertisers themselves. They may have a marketing or advertising department, and within that department, there might be an in-house agency. And we discussed yesterday some of the pros and cons of having an in-house agency. You know, it might be easier for the company. They can go right down the hall to their, art director and to their graphic designers when they need things. But some of the cons are it's an added cost, and those people working in that agency may be more, might not think outside the box as much as an outside agency. So then we also have an external advertising agency, which will develop creative for an advertiser. We have the media, which is the channel through which an ad is delivered. That can be TV, print, social media, outdoor advertising. There's tons of ways in which an ad is delivered to us. We have our suppliers and our vendors. Those are a group of service organizations or individuals that provide a specialized service. And then we also have ourselves, the consumers. We are the target audience. Advertisers may say that we are the biggest player in the advertising industry, because without us, why are they bothering spending any money advertising, if we're not consuming their product? So the key advertising terms, we have demographics, which describe an audience by age, gender, ethnicity, location, so the facts about them. We have the benefits, the features of a product that are highlighted to customers in an ad. And I did a little bit of a show and tell yesterday about the real benefits, better and cheaper, and how that's kind of changed. Probably in the last 50 years, it used to be that you bought a product and that product was advertised to you as something that was going to last, that was going to be a timeless piece. And I use the example of my grandmother's living room set that I still have in my living room, which she bought as it's a very well-made set. And it's been reupholstered multiple times. It survived a house fire. And now, furniture is meant to last maybe 5 years. TVs are meant to last probably 5 years until there's something new that comes out. Like now they have the 4K ones. Our cell phones, we're being told our cell phones are obsolete, within a year or two. So it's not always that something is cheaper anymore, but we're definitely being sold that there's something out there that's better. And that is one of the key ways that we are marketed to these days, is that you'll be happier, you'll be more attractive, you will be the best person on your block if you have the latest and the greatest. And I think that we kind of make a lot of disposable products these days because we're not manufacturing things to last. Instead, we're manufacturing things specifically to not last, so that way we'll consume more. We're a very consumer society now, and that benefits advertising. We have another term, which is campaign, which is a time-limited set of ads. So the campaign may run across different media, and it could be maybe for 1 month, or it could even be for 10 years, but it can be categorized together as they are the execution of a central idea. So some campaigns might be the Nike Just Do It campaign, the Have a Coke With campaign, and the new Old Spice campaign. Those are all ad campaigns. They run across multiple media, so you might see social media ads, you might see YouTube ads, you might see regular ads on the TV, but they all have that central theme. Then we have the creative, and that's the creative ideas behind an ad or the person team who comes up with them. And we have brand awareness, which is the extent to which a brand is recognized by potential customers and is correctly associated with a particular product. So it's expressed usually as a percentage of the target market. Brand awareness is the primary goal of advertising in the early months or years of a product's introduction. So one specific way that you can think of brand awareness is when you use lip balm. Do you call it lip balm if you're just going to go to the store and get some? Whether or not you are going to buy let's say the Burt's Bees brand, or maybe the Blistex brand, you don't call it Burt's Bees, you don't call it Blistex, chances are probably good that you call it chapstick. And everybody knows what it is that you are talking about. So think of how the brand awareness of chapstick has come to basically envelop or, be the umbrella for all of lip balm out there. Even if people aren't necessarily buying the chapstick brand every single time, there's so much brand awareness for that brand that it's kind of encompassed all of the products that are similar to it. Another thing would be probably Coke, because there are certain parts of the country that call all soda Coke, whether it's, the brand name of Coke or not. So these are a couple of examples, where brand awareness has kind of like enveloped the entire brand. We also talked about the different types of advertising media. So we have print, which can be your newspaper, your direct mail, your magazines, or even product packaging. Think of when you are trying to decide between, let's say, Honey Nut Cheerios and Raisin Bran at the store, and you're really not sure which one you want. You're probably going to go with, the package that looks better, which one had the better picture, which one kind of elicits your senses at that moment. The same thing can be said for buying a brand name over a store name or a store brand. If you're standing there holding both packages, sometimes your choice comes down to which product package looks better, and you might buy it. Sometimes it's not always the price. Product packaging really is its own set of advertising. Then we have screen and web. So those are your web ads, which can be social media, YouTube. You have your TV ads, which are your commercials. You have mobile ads, which are those pop-up ads that come up on your cell phone, and you have to try to find the little X to just clear it out so you can continue reading whatever it is that you were reading. Those are probably the most annoying. I feel like we've kind of taken care of pop-up ads on our browsers, on our computers. There's a lot of, blocking that's available to stop that from happening. But back in the 90s, pop-up ads were a nightmare on a computer. So it's a little bit better today. And then we have our outdoor media, which is billboards, transit signs, and posters. So that can be, anywhere, basically, especially if you're in a city. If you're in a city, you probably see a lot of outdoor media, a lot more than you might in a small town. Then we have our in-store advertising. So those can be your kiosks, your installations, your live feed boards. So those are like those boards. If you've ever had to sit at the DMV and wait for your number, there might be a little automated board that shows the number, and then it might show the weather. It might run a couple of news stories, like little snippets, and then there might be an ad for State Farm Insurance because you're sitting at the DMV. Those are those live feed boards. And then you still have more product packaging and displays within the store. So we talked about ad campaigns, and an advertising campaign is a series of advertisement messages that share a single idea and theme, which make up an integrated marketing communication, or an IMC. Advertising campaigns appear in different media channels across a specific time frame that often need to be clearly defined. Our modern advertising campaigns often combine multiple online and offline channels, such as online social media, TV, or out-of-home advertising, branded packaging, and then, some others. A critical part of making an advertising campaign is determining the campaign theme, because this is going to set the tone for all of those advertisements and any other forms of marketing communication that you're going to end up using. So the campaign's central theme or central message that will be communicated in the promotional activities is the campaign theme. The campaign themes are usually developed with the intention of being used for a long period of time, but sometimes they don't work, which means that they will be short-lived. I'm sure that there were lots of campaigns that, the first ad ran and it got a horrible response from the public and they ended up just nixing it right off the bat. So those are, that's definitely, that happens from time to time. And a new campaign needs to be thought up on the fly and get out there, or else, you're not going to have any advertising out there for a while. And you also want to reset that tone if you really made the public mad. Then we went over the advertising process. So phase 1 was to meet with the client. Phase 2 was to develop the direction of your solution. Phase 3 was to come up with ideas, which is one of the most challenging steps. Phase 4 is the design period, which you can see we don't even start doing our design until phase 4. And that's where the idea is articulated in visual form. Phase 5 is production, so you implement one's design solution. And phase 6 is implementation. That's when that solution is deployed and put into effect and your ad is out there for everyone to consume. We also went over a case study. So the broad definition of a case study is a published report about a person, group, or situation that has been studied over time. I apologize. I thought somebody was in my driveway. I will let you know that if my doorbell rings, I will have to run and grab it. I'm hoping they won't come while I'm doing my live session, but I have a package coming that I'm going to need to sign for. So if all of a sudden I say, hold on, I'll be right back. I just wanted to let you know that was why I thought that they might have been in my driveway, but it's just a big truck. All right. So anyways, back to our case study. That's what we are discussing in our discussion post this week. So I had wanted to kind of go over a little bit more what a case study was. And it's the broad definition of a case study is it's a published report about a person, group, or situation that's been studied over time. And in advertising, a case study shows that a particular campaign worked. So obviously a case study in advertising, a little bit different than when you do a case study in psychology. Case histories give you an inside look at the steps advertising agencies and advertisers take to create a campaign and how effective it can be. And case histories show the preceding issue or problem, the response, and the outcome. And usually in a case study, you get to see the creative that they have implemented. So that's usually included as part of the case study, which is really the cool part, seeing all the ads that they made and also reading why those ads were successful. Because as graphic designers, we should, look at things that were successful and then understand why. So I think it's really important that we study a couple of case studies like we are this week to see why they came up with that solution and why that solution actually worked. So the word brand, you've probably heard that word thrown around a bit, but what exactly is a brand? The first definition of brand is the name given to a product or service from a specific source. So used in this sense, the word brand is similar to the current meaning of the word trademark. With the rise of packaged goods in the 19th century, producers put their mark on a wide array of products, from cough drops to flour, sugar, beer, to indicate their source, so where it came from. In the late 1880s, for example, as the Coca-Cola company was getting started, there were many soda producers in every market. Before Coca-Cola could get a customer to reach for a Coke, it needed to be sure that the customer could distinguish a Coke from all of the other sodas that were out there. So in the first sense of the word then, a brand is simply the non-generic name for a product that tells us the source of the product, so where the product is coming from. When I buy a Coke, it's coming from the Coca-Cola company. A Coke is a fizzy caramel colored soda concoction made by those people down in Atlanta. And there actually used to be a very, very big Coca-Cola plant and distribution plant down in Cape Cod in Massachusetts. And for the longest time when I was a child and we drove past it, I was convinced that all Coke was made on Cape Cod. But that is not true. So how can you make your brand relevant? That's pretty much what we need to do if we're making a brand. The first thing that you need to do is you need to have a vision. So all brands have ebbs and flows, but it is important for your brand to always understand the dynamic of the marketplace. Is there a need for your brand? And what is that need? Are you conveying it? Number 2, ask questions. One of the biggest challenges that brand managers have is the threat of becoming myopic. They begin to believe that they know exactly what their target customer wants and what their motivations are. This is a huge problem, and it happens all the time. So when they stop asking questions, they become stagnant, and their consumers are fickle. We change our mind every single day. Everybody was all about the Samsung phones until the batteries started exploding. So, if you aren't asking questions, especially, how your product can be better and not blow up, your customers are going to go elsewhere. And if you're not fixing that problem in a timely manner, offering a solution for it, instead of just playing it off like, oh, it's a fluke, it only happened to a couple of them. Consumers are definitely fickle. They're not going to come back. Number 3, you need to innovate. One of the biggest opportunities for older brands is to create a reason for existing companies or customers and potentially new customers to rediscover the brand or take notice for the first time through innovation. And one of the brands that I discussed yesterday really does that well. Old Spice. Now, back when I was a kid, Old Spice was the cologne that my dad and my grandfather used. It was like an aftershave and nothing else. And, I wouldn't ever think of anybody but an older man using it. And Old Spice, by innovating, really brought in a younger market, 20-somethings, 18-year-olds, like even teenagers who want to use their products. And if they like their products and they continue to innovate, they may have a consumer for life. So rather than a consumer who is, say, a 60-year-old man and may use their product for 20 years, let's say that consumer lives to be 80. You have a consumer for 20 years. Somebody who's for the next 20 years is probably, every time they go to the store, buy your product. But if you can get that consumer when they are 18, think of how long you have a customer for. So innovating is great for bringing in new customers. And hopefully, if you continue to innovate, you'll keep those customers. And then number 4, and this is probably the hardest one, take chances. One of the biggest mistakes any brand manager can make is to say, well, we would never do that. Or that won't work for my brand. How do you know until you try it? If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But if it does work, again, look back to number 3. You have the potential to bring in new clients. So, kind of innovation and taking chances really go hand in hand. The same as having a vision and asking questions go hand in hand. You need to have a vision, and then you need to ask questions of your consumers regarding that vision. So, I think that these 4 items really help you to think through your brand. And you're going to be making a brand this week. You're making a logo for a city or a town. So that's your brand right there. So you need to stop and think about what your vision is. You need to ask questions, before you begin that logo. You need to innovate. Why you're trying to draw tourists into your town, so what can you do to make your logo stand out? And you need to take some chances. Now we have brand marketing, developing a simple and coherent brand message, very important. So think of McDonald's. I'm loving it. Simple, to the point, had a little jingle that goes along with it. They still sing it. Nike, just do it. Red Lobster, see food differently. These are all simple, coherent brand messages. Number two, be creative. So your name, tagline, and logo should be interesting, and it should also resonate with your audience. So it's almost like be creative, but don't be too creative that people don't get it. There has to be a fine balance there. Get it out there. Consumers should see your brand a lot. That goes back with advertising. Have a website, have social media accounts. If you can't afford to pay for advertising, social media is the best form of free advertising. It's like word of mouth to people you don't even know. So, just keep pushing, keep getting yourself out there. Discover your brand's value proposition. What makes you better? Think about that and then market it. And also, and this is really important too, know your competition. You can't beat them if you don't know who they are. So, knowing and understanding your competition is probably, that requires research and it requires time, but don't skimp out on that. There's a reason why your competitors may be doing better in specific areas. So look at what they're doing in those areas and see how you can compete. You have to know your competition in order to beat them. All right. So I have I forget why I put these here. Never mind. We are making a logo this week. So before I kind of get into this, let's look at the assignment real quick. Even though we're working on, we're going to look at the assignment real quick, even though we are working on the assessment. So for our assignment this week, we need to come up with a word mark logo for our favorite city. And your favorite city has been commissioned, your agency, and you are your agency, to promote themselves as a major travel destination for families taking summer vacations. So each week during this class, we're going to be creating a different part of that advertising campaign. So the first step in the process will be to design a wordmark logo to embody the campaign. To help you prepare, you want to do research on your chosen city. So that goes back to what I was talking about when I was talking about advertising and marketing and knowing your brand. And you want to discover distinctive architectural features, elements of civic pride, anything that has to do with your city. Like, you should do enough research that you understand how to promote that city. Then what you're going to do this week is design 3 different options for a logo that will be used throughout the campaign. So you're going to design 3 different options, but basically you're going to end up in the long run choosing what you think is your best one. So this should be a word mark logo. A word mark logo is text only. It should only include the name of the city, but you can add the state, small to the bottom. No clip art, no images, no illustrations should be added, but I'm going to show you a couple of ways that you can add illustration by not adding illustration today, if you know what I mean. Carefully research, or careful research will help you to choose wisely regarding your font choices. And we do have a couple of cities' websites that you can look at, or state websites that you can look at to kind of get an idea of what it is that you're doing. And so this is what I have. This is kind of like an old screenshot, but from the Visit Orlando page. So the Orlando logo, if you noticed, is just a wordmark logo. There aren't any images as part of that logo. The font is very readable. It's kind of in an orange, which when you think about it, Florida, like oranges, like the whole color. These are all the things that you need to start to think about when you're designing a logo. Different things like color actually matter. If you were designing a logo for Washington, D.C., let's say, good color scheme might be red, white, or blue. If you used purple and gray, that might not really convey that message. You know, people go to Washington, D.C. because of the history, because of, you know, government, all of these things that they want to see when they are there. So you want to connect, you know, in a way to your audience, you know, using color, not just font. So as you can see, like, this kind of all comes together. Then I have the City of Boston website. So this is the Boston logo. And it's still a word mark logo. There isn't any illustration to it, but look at the arrangement of the font, the position of the letters. It has more stylization than just Orlando. So you need to think about that. Don't just type out the name of your city in Myriad Pro and call it a day. That is not a logo. And I will let you know that. I will say, you know, this, your logo lacks any real design. You need to actually design a logo. So there are a couple of ways that we can, there are a couple of different logos that we can look at for examples. And the one I'm going to point out to you, which is the only, well, not really the only, but one of the best examples of a word mark logo, I'm gonna make the screen nice and big, is this FedEx logo. Now, Ralph, you're the only person here today, but are you familiar with like the different design elements within the FedEx logo, or the hidden image in the FedEx logo? If you want, you can type in, you can either type in the chat, or you can just turn on your microphone. It's really up to you. And if you're not able to chat, sometimes people watch on their iPad, they're not really able to chat. That's fine too. So if I don't see a response, I'll just assume that. But while I wait for his response, I'll actually go on to the next logo. So the Disney logo is still a word mark logo, but it's based off of Walt Disney's signature. And it's now been converted into a font, like there's a Disney font, and that encompasses the logo these days. We have Adidas. Again, just the word Adidas is a word mark logo, but there is an illustration that goes along with it. And it, okay, I saw your answer. That's fine. And if you notice, it's got the 3 stripes, which obviously is part of, the 3 stripes on the shoe. Then we have the World Wildlife Federation, who very successfully sued the WWF, World Wrestling Federation, because their logo was first, and that's why it's now known as the WWE. The Starbucks logo is interesting because it started out differently. It had the name Starbucks, but the icon has become so well known that they've been able to just drop their name and use just the mermaid as their logo without even their name, and it's Starbucks. Then we have Target. The word Target is the word mark, but it does still have that icon to go along with it. And then we have Amazon with the smile, A to Z. So the true word mark logo here, FedEx, what you'll notice is not only is it 2 different colors, but look at the placement of, the spacing between the letters, how closely they are spaced. The D butts up with the E is like running a little bit into the F, a little bit into the D, but it's really the EX here, which creates this arrow. So the negative space in the FedEx logo is really the best part of this logo. When you stop and you see that arrow, so, signifying your shipment, like your shipment's going to get there. And that's just created with type. So FedEx is such a great logo, although I will say I've been less than pleased with their delivery system lately, but their logo is still great. So what makes a logo great? Simplicity. This allows for easy recognition. It's memorable. There's instant impact. It's enduring. So it can stand the test of time. It shouldn't feel dated, and it also shouldn't feel stylized. let me see. I don't remember FedEx logo creator. I don't remember when the FedEx logo was created, but I know it's been around for quite a while. The Nordlina, 1994. I swear it's before 94. Oh, it might have been the 80s, but either way, it stands the test of time. You know, that arrow is just such a great design element. So it's versatile. Your logo should work across all mediums. This means print, web, and TV. So when I say print, think about it this way too. Your logo might need to go on a billboard, but it also might need to go on a business card. So when you're designing a logo, it should work just as well 10 feet wide as it will work being 1 inch wide. So that's something you need to, to consider when you're creating it, which means it's appropriate for its intended purpose. It's appropriate for the space that it can be put in. You really need to think about that when you're creating a logo. And there's a couple of things I'll go over when I'm doing my example today that may or may not work when creating a logo. But simplicity is one of the things, I'm going to come back to. Stay away from gradients in a logo. Stay away from borders in a logo. There shouldn't be any drop shadows. There shouldn't be any type of Photoshop effects in a logo. It should be simple. And I think UPS really messed up when they redesigned their logo. And I'll tell you why. So the original logo for UPS, right here. It was just the word UPS in the shield, and the top of the shield was a package with a bow. It was very simplistic. It was very well designed. It worked across all platforms. It was great. Then I think it was maybe 2003 that the logo was redesigned. And this redesign became a nightmare for graphic designers such as myself who needed to place that logo. There is a gradient going on in this logo. So when you start to scale a vector version of this logo, it would change the position of where the gradient was located, and it would change the width of the gradient because it didn't scale properly. So then what you had to do was you had to place, a PSD version of it or a JPEG version of it, which meant that you couldn't scale it any larger than the original one that you were sent. So on a billboard, unless if you were sent a 10-foot by 10-foot logo, you didn't have a vector version and you couldn't scale it. And it became a nightmare to work with as a graphic designer. And we all complained after UPS changed this logo because UPS is very well known. They have very specific brand standards when it comes to their marketing, and they want things to look consistent throughout all of their products, as they should. But their designers recreated a logo that does not work in all situations. So this is what I mean about having, problematic things in your logo. This version could scale very easily to any size you needed by adding in this gradient, and even like the border would get lost as the logo was scaled down. There was just too much going on in this new logo. Sure, it looks great at the size. It does not look great, however, when you scale it really small or when you scale it really large. It's kind of been there's so much talk about this logo. You can read article after article after article on the UPS logo and the UPS logo redesign. And one of your lynda.com playlists, whoops, I just made a note to watch it. This is gone over in the lynda.com playlist for this week, but I'm not going to show that because you guys can watch that on your own. All right, so it is 12:48 my time. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? We'll just say we'll come back at 1, and we will go over the week 1 assessment. I'll do a walkthrough of that, and then we'll go through the week 1 assignment, and I will do a walkthrough of that. And we'll jump back in. We're going to look at our assessment for week 1 first. So for the assessment, and there's a reason why we need to do this first. Before we can come up with our 3 is it 3 or 4? Our 3 options for our logo, we need to understand a little bit about our client. We need to do some research about our client. So one of the best ways that we can do this is to create a 1-page mood board about our city. So the mood board is a collection of impressions from your research and can show inspirational typefaces, colors, shapes, textures, imagery, and any and all of your other design processes. These notes can be simple facts about the city, photos, or special architecture in the city, or your own reflection about being in the city. You can add some hand-drawn sketches if you wanted, some mind maps or things of that nature. You may change the mood board for your project, which means move, add, or delete. But there are a few things that I do want you to keep in your mood board. And if you refer back to the assessment, you'll see based on my rubric. So again, make sure. I want you to at least have a sample color palette, some font samples, some keywords, at least 5 sample images, and to save it in the correct file type. So, you don't need to have a mind map. You don't need to have, your own sketches. But this is going to show me that if you have, your sample color palette, your font samples, your keywords, and your sample images, that you've done the research that is necessary. If you just handed in a mood board that says a name and you had 4 colors and the type that you did your logo in, I don't feel that you've really done some research. I feel that you maybe made the logo first and then took all of those elements and just threw them over into your mood board. So that's something to think about. Make sure you're reading over that rubric. All right. So you'll notice within the assessment that there is a template for you to follow. So if you click on the link, it will download an InDesign template, which is 10 by 10, but you still need to submit your board as a PDF. And when you download the file, it's just going to be called Mood Board Template. So we know that we need to have a different naming convention for our assessment for this week. So what you can do is you can just open up that announcement in a new tab. Oops, excuse me. I just inhaled a piece of bread while we were on break. And you can copy and paste the correct naming convention right when you download it, so that way you can get it named correctly right off the bat, and it's one step that's done. All right. So here is how I like to set up my files. And I go over this every single class, because I think it's important for you to have a system to locate your files. If you put everything on your desktop, if you go to your desktop, you'll notice I have a screenshots folder and a desktop folder. And there are certain things that I would normally keep in my desktop, but I have a folder and I have it all in there. And it's nice and neat when you go to my desktop. If your desktop looks like your downloads folder with 8 million things, how do you find anything that you're looking for? If that's also how you set up your your assignments and your assessments, how do you find them when you go to look for them to upload them? They're not in a set spot. So what you want to do, and what I do, is I have a folder. It's called Independence University. I have all of my mods, mod 1, mod 2, mod 3. We're in mod 3. I open up mod 3. I have a folder called DES 245 Advertising, because that is the course we are in. I have a folder for week 1 through week 4. So in week 1, I have an assessment folder and I have an assignment folder. And then I even have a discussion folder because I write out my discussions in Microsoft Word and save them. I even have my PowerPoints in here that I use. So everything is nice and neat. When I go to look for something, I know exactly where it is. I navigate to my College America Independence University folder. I go to mod 3. I go to week 1. I go into assessment. And here is my mood board that I've already downloaded, ready to go for the course. And I've renamed it. So based off of my naming convention, I'm ready to go. I know exactly where things are. You know, the more courses you take, at some point you're probably going to need to go back and you're going to need to find files that you have created in other courses, especially when you start to put together your portfolios for your portfolio review and for Behance. Knowing where things are located will make your life so much easier. So when your instructor says to you, well, you need that file from when you took DES 245, you know that you can do a search for a DES 245 folder, go to that main folder, and weeks 1 through 4 are right there, and it's all together. So I can't stress enough, how important it is to have your files in a logical system. There have been so many times where students have submitted the incorrect file because they've zipped their file, and then when they go in and they try to look for it on their machine, they can't find it. So they end up uploading the completely wrong assignment. And then their assignment is late. So you need to make sure that you have a system so you can find those files so you can upload them and you're always submitting the correct thing. All right, so done with that spiel. Let's open up the template that you have downloaded in InDesign. So you'll see, it's pretty much set up with all of the things that were in my, my rubric. Where it says brand name goes here. Your brand name is the name of the city or town that you are choosing to make a logo for. So for this class, I am going to make a logo for the town of Westport, which is near where I live. So I'm going to type that in. And I'll just do Westport, Mass. So that way, when somebody's looking, they know there's a Westport, Connecticut. I think there's a couple of different Westports, but I'm being specific to the one in Massachusetts. And then it says your name here, pretty self-explanatory. I'm going to fill that in with my name. Next, we have, overall concept ideas. So this is where you are going to personally write up what your concept is for your, for your campaign. Why did you choose this city? Why did you choose the colors you chose? Why did you choose the inspiration that you chose? This is the concept behind the mood board. So you're going to add in your little summary here, and also make sure that you're deleting these comments before you're submitting. If you submit it with these with this block of text, I'll know that you didn't go in and fix this. Then we have a sample color palette, a spot to do sample typefaces, and then we're going to come up with some adjectives and some inspirational logos. So before I can come up with like my sample color palette or my inspiration, I need to do a little bit of research on Westport, Mass. I mean, I know a bit about it, but this is how I would do my research. I'm going to go in and I'm just going to Google Westport, Mass. And I can pull up the town page. I can see that they have a logo. It's pretty simple. So I want to make sure that I'm redesigning a logo for them. So I want it to be better than the logo that they have. So I don't want to copy what they have, because I will look up and see if the town you've chosen has a logo and make sure it's different from what you are doing. I've got some images here so I can see that it's near the ocean. There's actually a really big river in town. There is this kayak place that during the summer rents kayaks at the head of the Westport River. So maybe that could be some of my inspiration. That and the beach. There's also a lot of, it's a seaside town, there's fishing. So these are the things I can start to think of. There's a lot of wilderness, like kind of like forests and forest trails in town. But also because we're in New England, it's all 4 seasons. So these are kind of a few of the things that I can think about when I'm coming up with the items that I want for my mood board. So the first thing that I thought of was kayaking. So I'm going to look for some images of some kayakers just on Google, just some quick Google images. I like this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to save this image to my assessment folder. And I'm going to name this inspiration. So I've got a kayak image. Maybe I can even find some images of the Westport River. Oh, see? Here's the head of the Westport River, and somebody's in a kayak. And here's all the kayaks on the side. So maybe I can save that image. What else do we have? This is, I think I know where this, oh, here's an image from the beach. So I'm going to save that. So I got 3 pretty good images, but I can also start to think of, what are some similar towns that might be out there, other beachside towns, and what do their logos look like? Because I'm looking for some inspiration. So maybe I can look up Cape Cod. See if they have a logo. All right, well, there's Cape Cod potato chips. That's a good logo, actually, for some inspiration, for some colors. So I'll save that to my inspiration. Let's see what else we have. That's a pretty cool one. Good Cape Cod Winery. Maybe Martha's Vineyard has a logo. That's a pretty good one. The Island of Martha's Vineyard. That one's a little bit more stylized, so I'll save this one. And it's okay that these are low res, because these are just your inspiration pictures that you're coming up with. And then maybe Newport, Rhode Island, because these are all some towns that are nearby. That's a good one. All right, so I have about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I've got 6 images in there. That's pretty good for some inspiration that I can add to my mood board. So in order to come up with my colors palette that I want to come up with, I'm going to base that off of some of my inspiration that I found. So I'm going to just place, so you can do, file place or Command D in InDesign to place the picture. And this is what I mean about having things, in a logical place. I can go right into my assessment folder, into my inspiration folder, and all those images that I just downloaded are right there. So I'll add in the kayak one first. Place it nice and go. Then I'll add in the head of the river. That nice beach photo. And then I'm going to put my logos that I found down at the bottom. So I got my Cape Cod potato chips. I have my Martha's Vineyard. And I have my Newport. So I've got some inspiration here, but I think I'm going to use one of these images as my inspiration for my color palette. So I'll probably, you know, this, I know that this isn't in Westport, it's just kayak picture, and I just wanted some kayaking, you know, as inspiration, but these two pictures are actually from Westport. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use those pictures as my inspiration to come up with my color scheme. Now, to come up with my color scheme, I'm going to use Adobe Color, which you may remember. The link for Adobe Color, whoops, is in the announcements in our live links from sessions right here. Now, one thing I want to let you know about Adobe Color. Up here, you need to be logged in order for this to work correctly. And I will say this, if you are someone who has two Adobe accounts, like I do, if you have the account that is linked to your Creative Suite, and then maybe at one point you made an account to make a Behance or ask a question on Adobe, and that has a different login, they need to be synced. So make sure that you are logged in with the Adobe account that goes with your Creative Suite. Otherwise, you will make a color scheme. It will not show up in InDesign like it's supposed to, and you will be really confused for 2 days thinking that something is just not working with Adobe, which has happened to me in the past. And that is my PSA for my public service announcement for Adobe Color for today. Seriously, I can't even tell you how long I basically sat there screaming at the screen until I realized that I was not logged in as the same login for my Adobe Creative Suite, and that's why it was not showing up. So take it from me, learn from my mistakes, and you will do just fine. So you can come up with a color scheme, you know, one of two ways. You can use the color wheel here and just come up with a custom scheme. You can come up with an analogous scheme. Like, let's say that you want to start with green and make a monochromatic scheme. You can kind of drag the little buttons everywhere. You can come up with it there. You can use the slider to, you know, make a color scheme, or you can create from an image, which is what I am going to do today, because I want to draw some inspiration from those two images that I downloaded. So I'm going to click Create with Image and navigate back into my inspiration. I'm going to grab this one first, my beach. I'm going to hit Open. And what it's going to do is it's going to drag the dots where it thinks it, you know, you might want to go on the picture. It's not necessarily always correct, but you can drag them and move them around. So I like that blue. It's almost too many blues going on here. That one's good. Maybe this one can be different green, a little bit of sand, maybe a brown even. That's kind of gross. That green. I like the sand. I like the blue. I like this green. I'm not 100% sold on this one. But even if you can't get it exactly like what you want, what you can do afterwards is click Custom. Hold on. Click on it. Come on. Oh, here we go. There. Go into the wheel right here. And you can kind of adjust the ones that you're not that crazy about. So that green was a little muddy of a green. I want it to be a little bit more festive. But I also want to make sure it goes. So I'm kind of mess around a little bit with the sliders here. Maybe get it into a little bit more of a turquoisey color. That's good. All right, so now this is the one that doesn't match. And be like a darker turquoise. And maybe I just want like a real pop of color. Maybe I'll just go with like a bright orange to go with this. I don't like an orangey pink. I like that. And then this one I want to be a little bit bright. Ooh, right there. That's nice. And that's a good sand. So I'm going to try to put them in a little bit more of a logical order so I can see them side by side. All right, so it's a pretty good color scheme for my first one. Kind of different. I'm not 100% sold. I'm not going to lie on this green. Ooh, that's better. More of a turquoise teal. These two kind of go together. It's a little tropical, but it's still beach, so it is supposed to be summer. Maybe I can get a little bit more yellow into this. Warm that tan up a little bit. Let's see. There we go. All right. So I'm happy with this now. I think that this is a good color scheme. I'm liking it. I'm going to save it. So I'm going to click save, and it's going to give me a long stream of numbers, which I do not want. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to name it Westport Theme 1. I'm also going to make a new folder for it, create a new library. I'm going to name this library DES 245 because that's the course I'm in. And that way, all of my different color schemes that I create, I can put them all in this one library. And then in that library, I can also add some images in. I can put my logo in later when it's created, and it'll save everything together for my course in that CC library named DES 245. So CC libraries are great. You should really try to use them. It's great for organizing all of your different stuff, basically. All right, so I'm going to hit save. Westport Theme 1, save. And what I would do, and I'm not going to do it because just for time, I want to make sure that I spend a little bit more time in Illustrator creating that logo, is I would follow the same pattern for my second photo, and I would make a second color scheme and save it to that same folder. So now when I go back into InDesign, what do I have open here? Close that. That down here. That down here. If I go into my CC libraries, which if it's not on your sidebar over here, go to Window, CC Libraries, and in the drop down, you can find my DES 245, and here is my color scheme. Now, this part is important. What you're going to do is you are going to right-click on the entire scheme, and just anywhere on the scheme. And what you want to do is you want to add theme to swatches. If you just click add to swatches, whichever color your mouse happened to be on, it's only going to add that one color swatch. But if you add the entire theme to your swatches, it will add the entire theme in. However, it's going to add it in, see, Westport Theme, as an RGB color palette. And we're working, even though it's just a mood board, this is something that you should really get used to doing, is you should get used to outputting things from InDesign, unless if they're directly going to the web as CMYK. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just drag that open a little bit. I'm going to select by holding shift. So I selected the first one, and I'm going to select the last one. I'm going to hold down shift, and it's going to select, all of them together. And I'm just going to double click with them all selected. And right here where it says color mode, you can just leave that check name with the color value because that's fine, unless if you want to go in and manually rename all of your color swatches, which, I mean, that's up to you if you want to do it. I say go for it. I'm going to change my color mode from RGB. I'm going to scroll up a little to CMYK. I'll just hit OK, and it's going to change all of them together. So now I have my whole color scheme right there. And because I'm going to be using this one way more than these default ones that are just thrown into InDesign, I can actually drag the whole folder right up to the top. Come on. Really? Now, sometimes my InDesign does things like this. It's like, yeah, you could, but I'm not going to let you because you're trying to do something live. Anyways, you can normally, under any other circumstance, just drag things around in the within the swatches, but not today, apparently. So I'm going to select, each block in my color sample palette, and then I'll select my color scheme so I can recolor these boxes. Go, and I got an extra one here, so I'm just going to delete that one. All right, so I have all of my sample colors in here. And if I had done more, what I would do is I would just drag this down here, and I can add a second row if that's, if I'm doing more than 5. You should have at least 5 because Adobe Color gives you the option for 5. So please have at least 5 in your assessment. Next, what I'm going to do is I am going to find some typefaces that I like. And the typefaces are inspiration for a logo. So you may not have a ton of typefaces on your machine, which is fine. A lot of you, as you become more engrossed in graphic design, you will end up accumulating more and more fonts. But when you start out, you're kind of stuck with what you have on your machine. So you have 2 options. First option is in InDesign. Let me pull up character. What you can do is you'll notice that you can add fonts from Typekit. So click on Add Fonts from Typekit, and you can search for fonts if you actually know the name, but it's going to open this up in your browser, which is a little bit weird, but it's fine. And again, make sure you're logged in as yourself. That's how it's going to sync. So you can look at, different types of fonts like sans serif fonts, script fonts, decorative fonts. And here's the thing, a decorative font is okay for a logo. It's not okay for body copy, but it's definitely okay for a logo. So you can kind of check and see what there is. Get a feel for your type of city. Like I said, my city is on the seaside and it's, a beach town. This type of a font right here probably wouldn't fit with that feel of a seaside, village. It's a little bit edgy for that. The same with this one. Even this, like, they're way too stylized for what I'm looking for. So, I mean, I need to know, like, this has a kind of a fun feel. This is difficult to read. You want to think about readability. You want to think about, what your city means. If it's a really hip place, a definitely, like, funky font would definitely work. If it's a, what do we call it, like a really techie place, like, something like this might work. These are the things you want to think about. That's why you want to do some research on your town. Another option is in that same announcement where I had the live session links, I have a link to Font Squirrel. I think that they have great fonts that you can download right to your machine. I love Font Squirrel. So, a script font might work for me, like this, like a font like this. I think that this opens in a different, oh no, you can use it. To cart. Add to cart. View cart. Check out. So some of them you might need to do things like this and give your information, which is fine because it's free. They just want to know basically who it is that's downloading their fonts. And then some of them will download right from Font Squirrel. Like this one it will say, you'll notice, download offsite if you whether or not you need to sign up for something. And some of them you may get to the offsite place and it won't be free, which is kind of a bummer. But try to find something similar then. So if I'm looking for a script font, I can just kind of click over here, look for something scripty, like maybe this Blackjack font, download that one. Maybe this one. This one could be fun. So I'm just looking for different ideas. Then I'm also going to need a font for, if I look, something for a headline and maybe a subheadline font. So, and then for some body copy. So I want to find something that'll work for that. So I tend to like sans serif fonts. I just think they're nice and clean. So let's see, let me get rid of that script. Go sans serif. Something like this, that's nice. Or even like this one, that's a really nice font. I'm gonna download that one. So that might work for my body copy, but then I need something for a headline. So I might do something with, for a headline, I don't want to mix two sans serif fonts together. So I might do like a slab serif for my headline. Let me look. The slab serif, it has some feet. Let's go a little bit more bulk to it. I need something with a little bit more bulk as a headline. I really like that one, but I think you have to pay for it. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, that one's expensive. It used to be free, but everybody loved it. So now it's like $279. So you can see, like, this is how I would choose my fonts, basically. Well, that could be cool. I'll see how they all look together. And all right, so I'm just gonna look at this for now. So I've got my inspiration. I'm gonna make a folder and call it fonts. And I can grab all those fonts that I just downloaded, put them in that font folder, and unzip them. Oh, open these up. Install. Install. There we go. All right. And I'm going to keep this open so I know when I get into InDesign which fonts they are, because I got to remember off the top of my head so I can put them over here. So what I might do is so I'm going to type the word headline. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. I'm going to type body copy. I'm going to make it like 16 point type so I can see what, different ones work together. I'm going to do, what was my other one? Accent, that could be some of my script fonts and or my logo. Got a little bit bigger. I'm going to name one logo. I might have a couple of different ideas for the logo one, so I might do that a couple of times. And maybe a sub-headline. There we go. So I try to do things at different sizes because, you know, based on what they're going to be used for. Like my headline's always going to be bigger than my sub-headline, which is always going to be bigger than my body copy. So, you know, setting this up at 32 points, 22 points, and 16 points, like that's a pretty good way to set that up. And maybe my accent would be 18 or 20. I don't know. All right. So I've got Blackjack, I think, was one that I might use for a logo. So I'm going to change that to Blackjack. I think another one was possibly Carrington. And the third was Grand Hotel, maybe? Oops. Yeah. Then I had for my headline, was it Xantroke? It might have been Xantroke. Yeah, that looks like a good headline. Then I have Beezy. That could be a good sub-headline. It could also probably be a good body copy. Use them together. And then an accent might be a Beezy italic. So you can see how these would all go together. I got a headline, sub-headline, some body copy, and then maybe an accent, all working together. And then I have a couple of different options for a logo. So I would add some adjectives. So some things like, you know, seaside, kayaking, ocean, you know, just like, it doesn't even need to be like just words that have to do with your town, like something that makes you think of your town. You know, add a couple. Do you need to have like 17 or 20 of them? No. You know, try to have at least between 5 and 10. And then you will save it when it's done. And you'll do a file, Adobe PDF export. You can do a high quality. Again, make sure that you're in the right spot. It's named appropriately. Hit save. Export. And if you get this, you're going to have to switch out a font. So I'm going to see, I can see that there's a problem with that Carrington font. So I'm going to change it to something else. I'm just going to quickly change it to this. All right. And double check your PDFs before you upload them. So get my sample color palette, my Westport. You know, you can add a little bit of design to this if you want in the background. Nothing wrong with that. Just make sure that you have like the actual things that you need in here before you upload it. Make sure everything looks good. Make sure your images didn't fall off. You know, make sure all of your colors are correct. Everything's correct before you upload it. Just always double check those PDFs. And I'll close that. All right, so that's your mood board. So next, what you will do is you will create your wordmark logo. So let me go back into this. So your favorite city has commissioned your agency to promote their city as a major travel destination. The first step in the process will be to design a wordmark logo to embody the campaign. Then you need to design 3 different options for the logo to use throughout the campaign. This logo should be wordmark only, which is text only. It should not include any images, clip art, illustrations. It should include the name of the city, and you need to do a city. You cannot do a state. So you need to do a city or town, no states. If you submit a logo for the state of Virginia, that will not meet the requirements of the assignment, and you will need to redo it, because then your entire assignment will be wrong, the entire mod. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you're reading the instructions. Your font choices and treatment of the letters and words should be what set the tone for the logo. So you need to create an Illustrator file that is 4x4. You need to have 3 different logo options. So you're designing 3 options to show your specific, client. I'm your client. It needs to be full color CMYK, and they need to be saved as a PDF file. So we're going to use multiple artboards, and we're going to use Illustrator only. No Photoshop, no InDesign. All right, so let's set this bad boy up. So they need to be 4x4. 4x4 by 3 artboards. We don't need to bleed or anything. CMYK mode. Doesn't matter on the orientation because it's a square. Create. There we go. Boom. And again, all of those color schemes that you created in Adobe Color, here they are. Yay. So, like I was saying, you can kind of get away with not having illustration by turning your text into illustration. Let me go back to that Boston logo again so you can see. Like, see how the Boston logo in itself, with the way that the text is, it has such a feeling to it. Like, it's definitely got a vibe to that logo. Let me zoom in so you can see. It's fun. There's a lot going on, the way the letters are placed, the angle. These are the things that you can do. Don't feel like you're stifled by only being able to use text. There's another logo I have created in the past that I will show you to let you know what I mean. So, in the past, I have created this Martha's Vineyard logo. I've, cut the bottoms of the letters and created this wave and matched the other letters up. So it's kind of a way to, there's the negative space creates an illustration without there being an illustration. So as you can see, there's, a couple of different ways that you can do this. Using 2 fonts together. But, I think that this was a successful logo by doing that this way. So I'm probably going to, just for time reasons, come up with something similar for this class. So I'm going to type out Westport. And again, if you just submit something like this, that does not meet the requirements of the assignment, so please don't. And I'm going to look up, what was it, Blackjack was one of the ones. I'm not 100% sold on that font, I'm not gonna lie. And you know what, you might find that some of the ones that you've downloaded, you're like, I just don't feel like I like it. And that's fine. That's completely fine. What were my other options? Oh, helps if I open up my InDesign file. I had Big Fish and Grand Hotel. I'm going to try that Grand Hotel one. And I might not like it, and that's fine. It's a little bit better. Let me try. This one could be fun. Oops. Bring up all my options here. Maybe I'll make it all caps. Again, you know, you want to think about the space that it's going to be in. So maybe I kind of create an illusion like this. And it will be easier for you to work if your type is set to outline. So you can grab the type, go up into type, create outlines, or it's Command-Shift-O. Sometimes I use quick keys. And then I realized like I should have told you what the actual key was. Oh, hold on one second. Hi.
Hi, nice to know.
No problem.
You got a sign for that.
Yeah. Stay. Hold on, I just don't want to check them out. There we go. Head it upside down. All right, thank you. Have a good one. You see. All right, sorry about that. I knew that he was going to come right before we were about to be done. I would almost get away with it. So I can start to, like, you know, think of this is a reflection in the water, maybe. Maybe I'll, whoops. I don't know, like kind of skew it a little bit. I can still have like a wave going through. So maybe that's something I'll do. I need to make sure it's like completely bumped up and sent to the back. So I might need to like redraw some of the lines. And again, if I wanted to, I can do like a wave and then maybe change just the color of that wave part. And this could even be like the sand, you know, and then like this is the water. Maybe it goes into the sky. I don't know. Let's see. I'm not gonna lie, me and free drawing sometimes, like I'm not the best at free drawing things. So it can get a little bit crazy here. Whoops. Change color so I can actually see what I'm doing. There we go. So I would obviously, because I feel like I'm rushing to get this done before our time is up, but I would obviously like fix my wave, because this is a pretty horrible wave. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not very pleased with this wave. Like, I've done better. I've seen better. So if I grab both of these, do something crazy with the Pathfinder, like, there we go. Like, clearly this part is awful. But you can kind of see like how I'm making an illustration by not making an illustration. So I've got this pink here, but I would change the color to probably that different blue. You know, all right. So select, same, fill color. Oops. So it's starting to look like a, you know, wave, and here's the sand underneath, you know, but again, my wave should clearly go to the bottom of my letters, which it doesn't. But, you know, here's one option that I've kind of come up with, and maybe I can start to skew my, you know, my sand here by doing, what am I looking for? What am I looking for? Stylize, no. Distort, no. Oh, I hate when I come, sometimes I go from, I've been in Photoshop for the last like 4 weeks doing like very, very intricate Photoshop work. And sometimes I go to use the same quick keys that Photoshop has. See, I wanted to do something like this. There we go. There we go. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not working. And make sure that everything stays within your 4x4 area. So you notice that that kind of started to go outside of the area. Make sure everything stays in there. So, you know, this is one option I can come up with. It's a little bit much. Maybe bring that in a little. There we go. So it's kind of a lot going on there, but if my wave wasn't so awful, it would probably look a little bit better. So you can just, you know, kind of play with the text is what I'm getting at. You know, I didn't come to that Westport logo in 1 week, basically. And one thing I want to double check is, I feel like originally your logo needed to be black, but I think that you can allow color now. Yeah, I'm not seeing it. It used to be that you had to do the logo and it had to be black, but now you can add color. So I just wanted to double check that. So again, use your use Adobe Color it is going to be the best thing for you. There we go. All right. And so you can see this is how I actually drew like a way better wave. I should just draw this wave. And copy and paste it in. And if you have like a good idea, but you want to try like just a couple of different variations of that idea, like I like this one, but I'm not completely sold on this one, you know, why not? Just, you know, try to do a couple of different ones. So here's my better wave that I have, which doesn't stink. And I can kind of do the same exact thing using Pathfinder. Sometimes me and the Pathfinder don't get along. Nope. Nope. Come on. Behave. Behave yourself. Oh, it's probably because I didn't colorize it. Nope. I can see what I'm doing. All right, I know how to fix this. Edit, paste in place. I'm very good, I will say, about figuring out nonsense that happens. And I find a lot of times it happens on my machine, and it like literally happens to nobody else. They're like, I'm not having the same problems as you. And I'm like, yeah, some days my Mac just hates me. I'm like, so consider yourself lucky. All right, there we go. Oh, there we go. All righty. Finally, you are cooperating. And so you gotta kind of go through and just make sure you get everything. There we go. So that's more, this clearly looks better than this one looks. Whoops. And if you do it, select all the same color and you have the same color over on a different artboard, just make sure you'll notice it'll kind of screw that up. So maybe if I did something like this. Might be a little bit better, but I might not even need the little sand. It might just be too much. That's kind of good just like that. So that's how I would come up with my 3. And then maybe I would decide that, you know what, I want to, whoops. I want to add, you know, Massachusetts to the bottom of one, not in the same font, obviously. And I can try to make sure you know, there should be some rhyme or reason to your alignment too. You know, use your rulers. Make sure that things are aligned. I know it's like, kind of difficult watching somebody design their own logo when you have to make yours. Again, fonts to outlines, way easier once you pick your font to move things around. So I got, another option, and then I would create my third option. Again, make sure that you are naming it correctly. So go back in. Go to the correct naming convention. Do a file, save as. Make sure you're in week 1 in your assignment folder. That's McNamara. And what I like to do is I like to save it as the Illustrator file, and then I like to save it as a PDF. I like to save it as both because the PDF I'm going to upload, but you really should be working out of an Illustrator file. So when you're done, do a save as again, change it to Adobe PDF, and click save. And again, make sure that you go in and you are checking those PDFs before you upload them. So you should have 3 pages from your 3 artboards. Make sure nothing's running off. Make sure you're nice and centered. This one's not centered vertically in the page. This is a presentation that you're giving. If there's anything else, like make sure there's no junk kind of hanging out over in the corners or anything like that. The Massachusetts should definitely be a different color. But yeah, so you want to really, really, really think everything through. You'll notice, each of these, like the most I have, it's like 3 colors on the logo because you don't want to do too much. And out of the 2, I'm liking this one, honestly. This is probably going to be the one I'll end up going with for this mod because this is awful. And then come up with maybe I do something on a path. So, we're out of time. But maybe I drew an ellipsis and I put something on a path. So I've got Westport, Massachusetts. I can turn the letters into a sun or something. There's a lot of different things that you can do.